People of African Descent New Thought Group proudly present Celebrating Our Soul, Consciously Creating Change. Our partner, New Thought Media Network, is offering this interview series to highlight some of the luminaries who will present at this amazing event. For more information, go to padntg.com. Stay tuned for a wonderful interview. Peace and blessings.
Hello, everyone. I'm Reverend Elzia Sekou, Senior Minister at CSL Denver, and I have here with me today a good and building friendship with my friend from the last Celebrating Our Soul, Brother Fabian Thomas, who's down in Jamaica. And it's good to know that they're safe and sound down there, and the Spirit of the Lord has troubled the water, stilled the water. So we're blessed and happy to have you with us. And without any ado, why don't you just give us a little bit of who and what you are, and then we'll get right into this interview.
Great. Grateful to be here. As you said, we're grateful. It was a Category 5 in building, but there's something about geographically where Jamaica is that makes hurricanes seem to veer. So it passed by, barrel passed by, and we're grateful. So my name, as you said, is Fabian M. Thomas. I'm speaking to you from Kingston, Jamaica. I am the Youth Ministry Director for the Universal Foundation for Better Living, a member of the UFBL. And I absolutely love serving in that capacity. Outside of that, I'm an adjunct lecturer. I lecture in cultural studies, communication, and mindset transformation. I also am heavily involved in the performing arts. I am the artistic director and founder of a performing arts company called Tribes and Kofa. And then the other part of what I do is training and facilitation. I call it training for transformation. Those are the three pillars of my life. And I'm excited about being here, and good to see you again and share space with you, Rev.
I'm so glad to be here. And the thing I love the most is that you are working with a crew that is, not only the future, but I think the brightest and the sharpest tools in our toolkit, which is our youth. And
Yes.
So when we come together with the Celebrating Our Soul and our whole theme of social justice and social action, what better way to start setting a real clear foundation than with our youth?
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit, what do you think about that approach of how we get them involved? I know you got a basis covered because you got the performing arts and things to really create a picture and image in your mind. So tell me a little bit about that.
Right. And it's something that I'm committed to because I've taught high school. I've done and continue to do a lot of work with youth development, youth empowerment, but also training and facilitation with youth. And it is so important. I'm glad I got the message and realized, and I used to share this with my colleagues, that it's not about teaching a subject. It cannot be just about teaching a subject. We're teaching life.
Yeah.
We're teaching personhood. Sometimes we're teaching survival. So we have to eke out those spaces and those safe, inclusive spaces to broaden. So one of the favorite courses I taught when I taught at the University of the West Indies here in Jamaica was a course on Bob Marley. It was called Bob Marley and His Music. And I would always say, so yeah, Bob died many moons ago. He was 36. Why are we still talking about him? I said, what is the relevance of this to your life? And I'd ask them, what are you showing up with the singularity of purpose and sureness that Bob showed up in his life? Yeah. And it was so interesting to see some of them, struggle to make the parallels. I also added a personal reflection asking, what has this course ignited in you? And it's so important to have those conversations, to listen, also to help youth find their voices, find their niche, find their passion, but also question. And so for me, it is, and part of, people of African descent, that's a crucial part of our existence and survival. the stories, the traditions that get passed on, the space that's created, the passing of torches, and and also that beautiful, powerful thing of what are the youth going to do that we did not do?
Yeah.
What is the next generation going to do when we pass that baton? What are they when they run on? What's going to be the outcome of their race? And that is so important. And I think and incredibly important and part of our grounding and survival to have those conversations and create those spaces.
Yeah. And I love that, because I've run rites of passage programs in Denver and in New York City, and when I think about that whole idea of passing the baton and
Mm.
Olympics coming up and all of the track and field events,
Hmm.
there's one thing about track and field, and especially the relay race and the team race, if you will. It is a concerted effort. You have some individual participants who are doing their individual thing, but as a team, they're trying to do it. So the team is dependent on me to do
Hmm.
my best and pass the baton, whether it's motivation or inspiration
Yep.
or just a physical baton. And so,
Yes.
I love the idea that, two things, that you're going to be working with the youth, and two, that you're going to be doing a master class on how to keep our youth engaged with this type of work.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So as I said, I'm currently the director of the youth ministry here at UC Truth in Jamaica, and it's a powerful responsibility, and it's also when you watch the young people grow, because some of them grow up in the youth ministry, baby until they're 18,
Yeah.
and it's about so we struggle not to make it feel like school.
Yes. Yes.
They say, this feels like a test. This feels like an exam. So you try to bear that in mind because they're in school, 5 days of the week, and then they come on
Yes.
Sunday and have extras, and so you try to keep it fun,
Mm-hmm.
engaging, also to make it real for them. But
Yeah.
then I observed and hear and throughout UFBL, even a lot of our usage, our youth ministry babies don't go on to become adult members.
Yeah.
They were, so I said, let me explore this. So I'm doing some research and presenting a masterclass on looking at where is that gap? What is, and looking at the few who do stay on, what was different in their experience? The ones who don't, what happened? When did we lose them? Was it when they went off to college? Because
Mm-hmm.
when you're physically at home and in your hometown, you come to church, even if it's by road. But when you go away to college, you don't have to. And even though there's an online opportunity, not everybody does. Some people do. So I'm exploring that. I'm doing general research and then some pointed conversations with the youth about the whys and wherefores and what they'd like to see us do differently. Because here's the reality, Rev. For the church to grow and move on, we have to pass the baton to the
Yes.
next generation.
Yes.
Who is the next senior minister? Who are the next
Yes.
leaders in the church? And so I'm excited about the research. Quite a few of the youth have said to me, "Boy, Uncle Fabian, we're glad you're doing this," because quite a few of them are away at school. I'm also excited about what the research will reveal, and looking forward to engaging colleagues at COS to look at
Yeah.
what can we do, because the reality is the majority of our congregations are older folk.
Yes. Yes.
And like I said, you have some kids who from the womb till they were 18, they were there all the time. We watched them grow in the church. And then you say, oh, where's so-and-so? They went away to college ended, but they never came back to the church. They never became an adult member in their own right. And
Right.
I'm also looking at those who may have moved on to other churches. Why? What was it? And especially if it's not a new thought church, what was the shift? So I'm excited to see what the research will bring and looking forward to sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's powerful, because I think, one thing you mentioned up front, you said about trying not to make it like school.
Mm,
But and I definitely understand that. But just the idea of an educator, really now, no matter what kind of educator you are, is a mighty, mighty task and baton
Ah,
to carry and pass, right?
very
My
much so.
daughter, who went to school for computer science and majored in computer science and linguistics and worked as a software engineer for about 3 years, she recently decided that she wanted to be an educator. So
Hmm.
she went back to school, got her master's, and she's going to be a fourth grade teacher starting in the fall.
Bless her.
And
Bless
and
her.
the thing that you made me realize that I want to hear you talk about is that although she was very skilled in computers, she's now, I like to say, an educational multilingualist, because she has to
Hmm.
teach science and social studies and
Yep.
history and
Yep.
all of that. And I'm wondering, how do you look at that in terms of how, especially from an African descent perspective, how do we begin to create that story in our young people's mind that intrigue them and entice them to stay put, to investigate? What do you think? How can we do that?
So important. So I believe it starts firmly with the teacher. So passion, the passion for it is so important that you're approaching it passionate and committed to it, and then being open
Mhm.
to learn, because what is important is understanding the youth mindset. What are they listening to? What are you competing with? What is appealing to them? What is missing? And then finding a way as you teach to bring those things into the space. So using popular culture, using
Mhm.
symbols, using, if you know, if there's a rap disc going on between two artists, is there space in there to use that?
Yes.
I
Yes.
remember for
Yes.
oh we had a conversation around the Will Smith, when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. We said, let's look at this from a new thought perspective. What was
Mhm.
going on here? Let's not do the
Mhm.
race consciousness. Let's look at it differently. These are two brothers, two of our brothers, two of our major symbols and examples, and we picked it apart. And so I think that's important. It's always to be student centered and youth centered, and then look at the outcome. So you have, in the classroom, you have your lesson plans and the der. I've often found that lesson plans are a guide, because sometimes teaching moments happen in the class and I'm like, oh, lesson plan to the side.
Yes.
This is a golden moment right here. But also making it, as the young people say, relatable.
Yeah.
So sometimes we approach a conversation from a space that they're like, huh,
Yeah.
what? So it
Yes.
has to
Yes.
be relevant to them. And also that thing of letting them ask questions and pick it apart. And the other thing that looms large in our space now is the gamification. It is so important, because whether we like it or not, a lot of our youth, from they could barely hold something in their hand, they were
Mm-hmm.
stuck with a gadget that got them into playing games.
Yeah.
For a lot of our young people, that's how their brains are wired now. It's pressing buttons. It's a game thing, and to try and combat that or fight in a classroom is a losing battle. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
how am I gamifying some of the content, and where am I using it? And it's so interesting that when you put things like in game forms, it's when you see their eyes light up, they're like, ooh. And sometimes people who were saying, oh, I didn't understand before, when it's in this game, they get it. Because I
Yeah.
like to say to them, I said, look here, you get to the most difficult level in a game in 2 days. What do you mean you don't understand this? Let's unpack that.
Right.
Whenever guests come to your house, your parents are asking you to set it up. And what is happening a lot of time is that they're not translating or transferring their brilliance to the rest
Right.
of their life. They're not even recognizing it as brilliance. And so I think creating spaces where, as a teacher, I'm conscious of that, but I'm also open to learning from the youth, to say, tell me about that, talk to me about that, and to admit, I don't know what that is, tell me, and let them become the experts, and then practice that in the teaching space. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
you're going to tell us about this today, or your assignment is, when we come back next time, you're going to tell us about this, so and so and so and so. And So one of the things that the biggest lessons I've learned, Rev, is whether it is a classroom, high school, university, college, Sunday school room, it should be
Mm-hmm.
a space where the youth want to be.
Yes. Yes. That,
That is so important. They should want to be there, even when they should say, "You're gonna make me late, mommy. Come on, daddy, get it together, get it together."
yes.
They should
Yes.
want. So many times the youth tell you they feel overmanaged, they feel bullied, they don't feel safe in the space, they're not enjoying it. It feels like a chore. We have to shift that. When we can get to a place where they say, "I want to be here,"
Yeah.
that is
And I think the
important.
thing that the thing that you brought up there in that answer, I mean, there are three things I think that are key, and I can't wait for the study because three things you said. You said relatable,
Mm-hmm.
transferable,
Mm-hmm.
well, four, current,
Mm-hmm.
and tap into the known culture.
Yes.
Because when we look at how traditionally we've taught, and especially
Mm-hmm.
when we start social justice and community building and those type of things, we've taught it from our frame of reference.
Yes.
And when I tell my children about what I did, they say, "Yeah, I get it, but how do I use that today?" Right?
Ah,
How is that relevant? As you said, when
yes.
your game was going outside, playing marbles or baseball, or my
Making a
game is
kite.
sitting in front of the TV.
Yeah, they're like, kite. What's a kite? What are marbles? What are marbles? And they laugh. They're like, you guys you had these hard things like stone that you to knock together, and that was fun. They're like, your life was lame. Your life was so lame. And even sharing those stories, I find, because I say to my young people, I'm so glad that the way my life rolled out, I had access to both my grandparents, my paternal and maternal
Amen.
grandparents. And my grandparents, my mother's grandparents were in the country. And so we go visit them and spend weekends. So I learn all these stories about our history, but the culture, and picking fruit and roasting breadfruit and music and burial rituals and then that I carry today. So now I'm seen as cultural studies is one of my main areas.
Mm-hmm.
So young people say, "How do you know all this stuff?" And I said, "My grandparents."
Yeah.
I listened to them. I had conversations. I asked questions, and so now I am able to pass that on because when you don't know who you are and where you come from and who your people are,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
major gap. And so many of our young people say, "I don't feel like I belong anywhere." They tell you, "I
Mm-hmm.
don't think anybody loves me. Nobody tells me that." And so that
Right.
thing of,
Right.
we know this, and we have it in Jamaica. We want to say, "Who's your family? Who you related to?" Because we want to place you.
Yeah.
Oh, Americans say you're kin to so and so and so and so. Oh, you are from the family because that also marks about you survived. You
Yes.
made it off the ship.
Yes.
We got on shore. Oh, Eliza's here. So, oh, you made it. And so even helping them connect those as they kind of go, wow, this whole diet of social justice. What does that mean? I'm so excited that films like Rustin and Origin, and we have to use them. I say to families, watch these with your kids. If you watch it in three parts and talk about it.
Yes.
Talk about what is the relevance of Bayard Rustin to today? Martin Luther King, Malcolm X.
Yeah.
What is the relevance of the Black Panther today? Marcus Garvey, 90 of the Maroons. What is the relevance? Because the kids see them as some old dusty people. We keep
Yes.
they're like, what?
Yes.
And when you
Yeah.
went, it's amazing and beautiful. You see them connect the dots and go, oh, so this right that I enjoy now, if this person hadn't marched for that, hadn't been hung for that,
Right.
I wouldn't have this right. And then the
Right.
question becomes, so what are you doing with that right? And having those conversations around, and now our youth now have been around. They've seen, the Trayvon Martins, the George Floyd.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In Jamaica, our situation is different. It's not white police brutalizing black people in Jamaica. It's black police.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the youth are seeing. It's now saying, what does social justice mean?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you show up? And how does this play out in your life? And what
Yes.
do these things mean to you, beyond the headline, and do you feel safe? Do you feel safe in school? Do you feel safe on the road? And having those conversations. And then we start to talk about equity and inclusion. Can it be safety for some and not for everybody, only for the folks we like?
Yes. Yes.
Packing those things with our youth around, then how will you show up? What is the relevance of this to your life? And so they start to have the conversation with themselves and each other and start to create socially just spaces
Yes.
with their friends and in the classroom, and and at home they can have a conversation, and also in the church.
Yes.
Very important.
You know, again, a couple things you bring up there, and I'd like to just hear your input on it. As you said, both your grandparents, you had access to both of them, and the extended family, and I can imagine, especially on the island, that this 4 degrees, 5 degrees of separation, everybody's kind of related, and so the community, although it was a distinct thing, underneath it was its own family, right?
Yes.
And so you begin to hear about the struggles of social justice and coming through and raising people up. And now, because we are so spread out, and because we don't have that ability to hear those stories or to tell those stories, I think the for the young people to understand the struggles, if you will, that we had to go through or surmount is lost. And so the one thing that's key to me there was the whole idea of family and knowing where you come from. I consider myself somewhat of a amateur genealogist.
Right.
And when I was running my rites of passage program, one of the things I had them do is to create a family tree.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that family tree, find someone who you heard a story about that you wanted to
Mm-hmm.
know more about. Now go ask. And when
Yes.
we do that, I think it gives the kids, it gives them some pride, if you will, when they learn about the things that they had to go through, the things they accomplished, and gave them
Mm-hmm.
this idea of social justice. They did that with all of this in their way. Imagine what they could have done if that stuff was not there, if it was a socially just environment. So
Yes.
how do you think we can get that? Because I think that would be a spark to get some of these kids involved continually.
Yeah, I think that thing of yourself. So a while back, I did a program with some youth, and same thing, gave them a thing to, you know, ask some questions about your family. And one of the young men came back and he was like, "Look, y'all, don't talk to me. My great 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 grand uncle helped to build the Panama Canal. What, you can't tell me nothing." He was like, "What?" He
Yes,
had no idea.
yes.
He didn't know where the Panama Canal was. He went and researched, and he said, "I had a family member who helped to build this." And he said it was like he was seeing himself for the first time.
Yes.
And even that thing, that conversation around what our ancestors and our forefathers pushed through and survived so we could be here. I think
Mm-hmm.
connecting that dot is powerful for young people because we take it for granted. So I find I teach literature. That's one of my favorite subjects to teach. And sometimes it's heartbreaking. We have these books or plays that are a perfect opportunity, and teachers skim them over. We have a play called Anansi that's about a girl being told stories on a
Oh,
slave ship. And people, oh no, we didn't cover that. We skipped. I'm like, what? You're in a 95% black country teaching Caribbean literature, and you didn't, Life of Letitia is a story of a little girl in Trinidad, and it's kind of skimmed over. So some of the opportunities to do some deep dives, and then say, okay,
yes.
so you're reading this story. How does this resonate with your life? So that
Yeah.
people, youth, take it and carry it with them, and it will grow and blossom in its own way. And that recognition, talking about the bullying, are you seeing kids bullied at school, cyberbullying? What are the things that you're being a observer to? a bystander? Are you intervening? And if you don't feel that it's safe, are you telling somebody? Or do you also, a powerful thing years ago, one of our youth, Jada, she's a woman, grown woman. She actually did my survey. We were talking about that in one of our lessons, that she admitted that she had bullied a girl, that there's a girl that was being bullied at her school, and she had added me. And at the time, it wasn't a big deal to her. When we're doing this lesson series, it hit her that she was a bully at that time. And what happened after that is her paradigm shifted, and she started to intervene. So new kids who came who were pariahs in that moment, she would befriend them. She would sit with them. She would talk with them, and it was such a powerful thing that she had the revelation that said, "Oh my goodness, I bullied that girl. Not I wasn't just a bystander. I added to it because everybody else was, and I wanted to fit in." So she learned this lesson about individuality, about choosing a higher ground, about kindness, about love. And I said to her all the time, I said, "I'm so proud of you that you acknowledged and admitted that based on what you knew then or how you were demonstrating then, you did this, but you can make a different choice." Because a lot of times young people say, "Well, if we tell the truth, you're going to shame us or punish us." And it's about being honest and saying, it's about learning from that stuff. And then how do they say, "Oh, am I supposed to wear a cape every day?" So they often started seeing it being, that person who's socially aware and wants justice as a burden, as opposed to if it's just your being, it's not a burden. And then you'll find other people who are sometimes waiting for somebody to say something.
And as I sit here and I had this epiphany, this light went off in my head in terms of, I'm sure you know about the Montessori method of teaching.
Yes.
Maria Montessori. And her way of getting, and I just thought about this from a new thought perspective. Her way of getting kids to learn was through history and dealing with the land, right? She had the crop, but her thing was through history, we can go into literature, we can go into science and math, we can go into history. And so I just thinking about, how do we begin to create a narrative where we can start with the history or with the literary story, probably is better. Start with a literary story and then take a character like you were saying about the young lady out of Trinidad, and now let's dig deep in the historical perspective of that. What was happening to our people in 1895 or 1865? And how was the new thought principles that came over from our African heritage engaged or not, or lost or gained? And when we can get kids to do that, I think it's powerful, and it has more of a lasting effect. Now, I'd like to add, what do you think are some of the common misconceptions about young people and social justice?
I think one of the biggest things is a lot of young people see that's something that's external to them. It's not. It's a old people thing, and something that's not necessarily relevant to their lives. I think for a lot of them, some shifts happen around, with some of the recent things that have gone viral. But for a lot of them, it manifests as trauma if there's not a space to now unpack them in a broader context.
Right. Okay.
Yes. And then there's also that thing of, if I am personally comfortable, I live in a relatively comfortable home, I have access to stuff, then that's not my problem. I'm good. That's for the folks who are suffering. Yes.
That's an amazing thing there, because I just had a conversation with a very good friend of mine, and we were talking about the young people and passing the baton. And the question came up about, I think it's a African diaspora tool that we use to try to enhance and make sure our young people, our youth, our kids have a better playing field, if you will, and better skills to play in the game than we
Yes.
did.
Yes.
And then the question came up as to, yes, but did we somehow not give them an opportunity to shine or sharpen a certain tool or develop a certain skill by
Yes.
doing that?
Unfortunately, in some cases, yes.
And how do we begin now to kind of recapture that for some of those who have passed that prime, but instill it into the younger ones who are coming up?
Because what has happened with a lot of our young people is this sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
They complain about chores. They're like, you better get out that bed and go do something in the house. What are you complaining about? You were living rent-free, eating free food. Yeah, so there's this thing of, but, the entitlement. And even at the college level, the people are complaining, oh, it's like the lecturers are ganging up on me. And I'm like, are you familiar with a document called the academic calendar that has all the dates of when assignments are due? Have you read this document? Like, really? We're ganging up on you? Like, what are you talking about? You signed up for these 5 courses. We're finding, and even in the workforce in Jamaica, a lot of workplaces are now saying that the time they're having to dedicate to get people actually ready for the job is increasing. So they're getting people who are qualified on paper, but not ready and not grown, not self-aware, not socially aware. So they have to do this coaching and mentoring to get them ready. And I think that is something we have to go back into the high schools. So in Jamaica, I firmly believe our education system is too assessment focused. It's too focused on passing tests and exams. It's not focused on content and knowing and understanding, which is important. So it's the sense of, oh, that's not my problem. As long as I have my phone and my games and I have as opposed to some young people who have a natural curiosity about the world and life. And I think that is very important.
Right.
And to create the space, and not to bully them and shame them, but to have the conversations about what are you passionate about? What do you believe in? And hear what they're saying and see and then throw some things out there and also tell some stories that they may or may not know.
Yeah.
Because even in teaching the Bob Marley course, what was interesting is, because we had people from other islands there and other countries, many times the Jamaican students were the least informed about Bob. Foreigners knew more about Bob's life. They also knew more about his struggle and the relevance of his story.
Yeah.
A lot of people knew the music surface. They didn't know about the other stuff that he overcame and how he said, "This is my calling." And he was clear. This is not just about music. It's about music and Rastafari. Rastafari is the only contemporary religion that started in Jamaica.
Wow.
He was clear that it wasn't just about music. It was a mission. And so even young people finding themselves in that spaces, what appeals, and sometimes they don't know.
No.
Sometimes it takes several going to think, what are you passionate about? What are you really interested in? Why are you here? And I say to them, don't feel bad because they're 40-year-olds who don't know.
Yeah. And the thing, as you were saying that, it occurred to me that Bob Marley's whole life was social justice.
Life.
And even under distress and all kinds of threats and all of that, coupled with his fame and invasion on his privacy, he still stood that course. And it's a great story to tell. So what I want to do right now, I just want to step to a brief commercial to just talk about the conference that's coming up in, like we said, less than 3.5 weeks. And I want to come back and ask about, this whole thing about taking stories, and I want to bring up something, and then we're going to go from there. So let's just take one quick break for this commercial and be right back.
Time waits for no one. It's true. Regular registration for Celebrating Our Soul has closed. Fear not. Late registration is available. While there are limited seats, there is room for you if you register now. Go to padntg.com and register, and you will experience phenomenal live music, unique master classes, scrumptious food, and loving fellowship. Don't delay. Do it today. Go to padntg.com and join us at Celebrating Our Soul, Consciously Creating Change. See you there.
Yes, yes. And we have one of those master teachers with us right now, Brother Fabian Thomas, and he's going to be bringing us some insightful tools and tips and some studies that he has going on how to get our youth more grounded in this idea of African diaspora and the justice and the work we do to sustain this teaching and our people. And I'm excited and looking forward to participate in that.
Yes.
And you know, before we left, we were talking about the story of Bob Marley. And and I haven't seen this story yet, but I think it speaks to a real social justice event, if you will. There's a new movie that just came out called Sounds of Hope. The story of Possum Trout. Now, I don't know if you've heard of that. I mean, it literally just came out yesterday.
Okay.
And it's this
Is that the
story.
thing? Is that the adoption story?
That's the adoption
Oh,
story.
the trailer undid me. I can't wait to see it. The trailer, I'd never heard. The trailer undid me.
If
And
you know,
what
you're
an
talking about
amazing
social
story
justice and
of-
community.
yes, and then them actively saying, "We take a child. These are our children." I cannot wait to see it.
Yes.
And these are these, if you want to say, regular folk.
Yes. Yes. And for those who if we pique your curiosity, here's a little bit more that there was 22 families that adopted and took into their homes 77 kids who were orphaned or whatever. And they go through, and these were black families. All 22 of the families were black. And they took these young people in and made them feel, after they felt a strain, to being a part of a family, to being a part of a community. And that's a form of social justice.
It is.
Right or wrong.
It
and
is.
I think that'll be a great teaching tool for our youth in the importance of what we're doing here and what we're trying to do with this conference. And I'd just like to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Those examples. So storytelling has become huge all over the world in business, in marketing. People, they're recognizing the value and the power of stories. And we have so many stories that we can pull on, actually real life stories. And we have writers, who can write stories and use them as tools for information, for motivation, but also for learning in powerful ways. So people can see the relevance to their lives. They can get inside the nuances of the story, as opposed to being told and guided and instructed or berated. You get pulled into a story in the same way that music and art does with people. And I think that is so important. What resonated with you? Do you see this having relevance to your life? What is your story? That's also the other important piece of empowering youth to tell their story from their perspective, because it belongs in the mix, like you said, and we have all of these heroes and people who changed the way our world played out, and we need to say their names and tell their stories, but also talk not to make them superhuman. They had flaws and foibles and fears, but they pushed through. There were days that they didn't want to get up, but they got up. As you said with Bob Marley did that show 2 days after being shot. 2 days. He was, and Bob was scared. He was not like, he wasn't all that. He had to think on it and pray on it and talk, and he decided, this is what I need to do this. And then, and you see it in the film, and having taught on him, he was heartbroken that his own people, so he left. His exile in England happened right after the concert. He said, I have to leave. And he went to London for a long period of time. And that's when the Exodus album came out. You know,
Yes.
Exodus, movement of the people. I've left my homeland because my own people tried to kill me.
Yeah.
But then he came back, and he came back into the bigger concert where he had the two leaders hold hands. So as you said, he was clear in his utterances to his mom from early on that his purpose was a messenger for Rastafari and reggae music. Clear, straight up.
Yeah.
And every situation, he paid his own way to go to Zimbabwe, to Rhodesia for their independence. They didn't have any money. And he said, we need to be there. So he paid to perform in the independence celebrations because he said this is too important for us not to be there. The legendary Madison Square Garden concert, the Bob Marley and the Wailers at this time were way bigger than the Commodores. And when Frank approached him and said, be the opening act, Bob said, yeah, because Bob understood the assignment. Bob knew that people just need to see us and hear us. I don't need to be the headliner. People are like, are you crazy? Look at it. And the rest is history.
Yes.
They mesmerized them. So as you said, his whole life journey, and again, you know, with all the foibles, you know, the 9 women and all the kids, and even Rita deciding, you know, this is not a regular marriage. And she made a choice.
Yes.
And interestingly, many of the things that Bob did not get to do before he died, Rita did after he died.
Yes.
She bought the studio Tough Gong. She established the foundation. She built, and for me, that's a powerful choice. Because she said, was it I that she wrote the book? No, I cried. It was painful. But I decided to stay because I decided this was bigger than a regular marriage. And then she could have said when he was done, well, I'm done. She said, no, I'm honoring this commitment to the things we dreamed about and ideated together. And so that is such a powerful example of, you know, a man, this woman, and everybody around him taking this journey that was transformative internationally, not just in Jamaica.
Yeah, and again, as you explain that, it's very clear to me when I look at African diaspora, you know, we always hear and are reminded of how our history was transmuted, or not transmuted, but transferred, was through story, through the griot, through the griot. And so we understood from the motherland that the sense of story is captivating, because in that I have song and dance and reenactment. And it gives you the opportunity to get involved, engaged, and inspired. And Bob's story is just that. And so when we can begin to take those kinds of stories and the story about the sounds of hope and transform that into our minds of our young people as this is social justice in action. It doesn't always necessarily have to be marching.
No.
But it's about changing the environment, making things better for everybody. Then I think we will grab a lot more.
And here's a powerful piece about the storytellers. The griots were also social justice people themselves, because they would tell power about itself and say, don't get mad, I'm just a storyteller. They would liberally insert things and poke fun at them and say, this is so wrong. And say, oh no, what are you talking about? I'm just a storyteller. I'm a humble dancer. No offense, man. And so they deliberately put things in those stories to say, look at this. Here, I'm holding up a mirror to my people, but also to you. And so that speaking truth to power was happening with our griots from way back, because they recognize I have a unique opportunity as a storyteller, as a griot, as a dancer. And, you know, we see it with the blues. You know, the blues was holding space. The people in the room knew those stories. They were living it.
Yeah.
And they said, we have this stage and an opportunity, and I'm going to tell you my truth. And it, you know, and as we know, people say, oh, that's not real music. These untrained black people, you know, they try to dismiss jazz as well. How can those people be making art.
Yeah, yeah, of course. They're culture. They're not culture. They can't make music. And
Yeah.
when you think about the origins of hip hop, that's what the hip hop culture did in the very beginning. They was holding up a mirror to society, saying,
Yes.
this is a part of the injustice that you perpetrated on a certain community, and this is
Yep.
what it does. This is how it transforms,
Yeah.
how it arms, how it elevates in some cases.
And how funny you mentioned that and they've done that historically, that hip hop rap were directly influenced by reggae music, reggae and
Yes,
dancehall. They were KRS-One, they were listening to the early dancehall artists. And so the ancestry, the history, the connection, and as you know, now lamentably, rap and hip hop and even dancehall have become something else. The gratuitous sex and violence on each other. It's become this thing.
yes,
That is about, again, a mechanism that says this sells.
yeah,
So that social justice piece
yes,
has lessened.
yes,
That sense of responsibility has lessened to the blame.
yes,
You will become popular if you so and so and so and so and so and so. So again, he said that thing about the young people, about what is your voice?
yeah,
What story do you want to tell?
yeah,
What difference do you want to make? What is the power and influence that you carry in your being? Because you are the seed of survivors.
yeah. And
Some
and
folk
and how
endured
do
some
we?
things for you to be here.
Yes, and how do we begin to infuse back into that culture that has shifted the idea of oneness, the idea of new thought, the idea of ancient African teachings of we
Yes.
are one people, we are a family. As the saying goes, we may have come over here on different ships, but we in the same boat now. And if
Yeah.
we can't come together to right the wrongs and justify people being uplifted to better positions, then the
Yes.
boat is going to go down.
Yes. And that picture that I use in training sometimes, where the boat has a leak and the folks at the top of the boat are going, oh ho 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 ho. And of course, it's like we're all gonna drown. The
Yeah.
water's gonna get to you eventually. I
Yes.
think it's that thing of, so there has been a shift, and I think I'm present to it. So as there is much more of the sharing, the storytelling, the conversation about love and
Hmm.
oneness and healing, and more Black people in therapy and healing trauma and coming together and doing community work. And I think I pray that will continue, because you're seeing the difference. You're seeing people holding space for certain things. You're seeing people stepping out. You're seeing people committing to, this is what I'm going to sing about. This is the movie I'm going to make.
Yes.
This is the book I'm going to write. You see
Yes.
people volunteering in school, and you see people talking about, I had no idea about this connection. And I think that is so important, because the more we get of that, the more of those voices, people will now get varied images, varied options, and also start to say, we are one.
Yeah.
And look at the power of love. That love heals, that the transformative power of a love is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also that thing of giving that gift to yourself first,
And
and giving it to others. And then what does that look like in your work, in your life? So I always like to say to myself and others is, it is a powerful thing to show up in love. But when you show up as love, that's an even, when you show up not walking in the light, but you show up as the light.
yes.
That's a more, and we have to flex that spiritual muscle as we go on, so it becomes enough, because it's not a show you're putting on, it's who you are.
Yes. Yes. And
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 that's crucial.
and when again, you bring up the perfect point for me in terms of the one love, and I didn't know this, the whole phrase of I and I, until I watched the movie. That whole idea of one love, I and I, is that we're the same. It's
Yeah.
one thing here.
Yes.
And when we see that, and when we embody that, I
Yeah.
come as love and not in love, because
Yes.
what I do to myself, I do to you,
Yes.
and vice versa. And so, how do we begin to perpetrate that as a social justice platform that says, look, we have to live in this harmonious, diverse
Mm,
world that the nature, and I know you see it down on the island with all of the different tropical this and
hmm.
that, and the plants and the animals, how it just folds into one thing that
Yeah.
supports each other. And we have to take that example, I believe.
Yeah, and I think we have to again speak it into the spaces and have the conversation with the youth. So for me, as a teacher, like in the formal classroom, lecture hall, wherever, I have basic rules. We treat and speak to each other with respect in this space. Nobody's better than anybody else. And when
Mm-hmm.
things contravene to that, I stop the class and say, "Oh, no, let's go back to our agreement. You're not calling anybody out their name." I manage that.
Yes.
And I make sure I embody it. So I, without even thinking, call my students king, queen, prince, and princess, and I try to learn their names as well.
Mm-hmm.
I say, "Come here, young king. Let me talk to you." And so many of them say, "Sir, nobody ever calls me that."
Yeah.
Like they say, "Sir, how do you know my name already?" And so those little things, and then around, what is the energy and vibe we want in this space when we get together in this space to learn for these whatever minutes, because that energy comes from us,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
important, that conversation around, and it's hard sometimes because sometimes something, especially depending on what you're teaching, triggers something in the youth, and there's a space for healing, and if people tell us, and then as a community and even that thing. So something I learned from the social workspace, all my classes, all my sessions, all my workshops, whatever I'm doing, whenever there's a gathering of people, I start with a check-in, and the check-in is one word or two that describes how you feel right now. No judgment, no explanation needed. And we end with a check-out. And it's so interesting. 9 times out of 10, a lot of people do not know how they feel.
Mm.
Think about it. Or they say, "Oh, everything's good." That's not an emotion. How do you feel? And it's funny, students at first like, what was something they said, "Sir, is this graded? Am I going to get a grade?" But it's so interesting to hear them later on in the semester start to say, "I look forward to checking in because it's the only time in my day where somebody asks me and waits for a response."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then sometimes they say, "Oh, I feel so much better." And I say, "See, because you were in the space, something happened in the space, and let's give thanks for that." And for me, that's so important, that being aware, that social awareness, that self-awareness plays into our being agents of social justice.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to hold myself accountable and say, "I was really unkind to my brother Elijah today. I shouldn't have said that to him. Where did that come from?" And
Yes.
then I can come back to you and say, "My brother, I'm sorry. But if I'm not self-aware, it's you. You're the
Yes.
problem."
Yes.
So even that piece of, and then when you know better, do better, and then when you now show up for something more than yourself,
Wow.
and for young people to like to have those conversations, and for me, use those things in the room to start to do that shift of, you know, I like to say, your spirit, what's your footprint in the world as you
Mm-hmm.
navigate the universe? What footprint are you leaving? How are you impacting and influencing and being influenced by the
Yes.
spaces you hold and enter, and be
Yes.
conscious of that?
Wow. This I can't believe time has just zipped right on by
It has.
as we just get deep into these conversations of how this conference celebrating our soul is going to be so juicy and so nourishing for all aspects of the community.
Yes.
And I think your involvement with one of the most crucial, if not the most crucial, is our youth. And
Yes.
and
I'm
I look
excited. Oh,
forward
I'm
to your
doing a
master.
workshop with them on financial intelligence. That's my focus. That's the topic. We're doing several things, social, but I'm doing sessions on financial intelligence, and I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Unpacking, what is an investment versus saving, and generational wealth and and doing it appropriate for age levels. So they
Yes.
walk away with this increased or enhanced sense of this thing that is so important, which we know. And in America, but also in Jamaica and everywhere there was slavery, there were things put in place to diminish generational wealth, to make
Yes.
that not be a thing,
Yes.
because we weren't supposed to survive. We weren't
Yes.
supposed to own anything or have anything. And even in this day and age, saying, what does that look like?
Yeah.
What financially, what do you know? What do you understand? And what do you want? Because we know our Father's house has many mansions,
Yes.
and prosperity is ours, is our birthright. We're not here to struggle and suffer, but knowledge is power.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love that, and I can't wait to just attend and get inspired about how we talk about wealth and transferring wealth, and how do we get our youth inspired and engaged, because they are, whether some people want to face it or not, they are the leaders.
Yep.
And one day we will be sitting down and they will be taking over. And as my father would always tell me, he said, boy, I'm going to try to teach you right, because one day you're going to be making decisions, and I want you to make the best decision, because it's going to affect me.
There you go.
And that's what we want to do with our young people. And I look forward to you being able to do that. Is there anything in our last couple of minutes, is there anything we've missed or that you want to just share in closing to let everybody know, look, time is running. We got 3.5 weeks. There may be some personal physical spaces, but the virtual is there. So you don't want to miss this. What do you want to share just to entice people and encourage them to come and be involved in this thing?
I say be there. I'm excited about the addition of the master classes, in addition to the presentations. I think that's a nice add. I think for me, having one under my belt, I'm approaching it with an excitement and level of readiness and wanting to share space. I'm also looking forward to supporting people. So, like, I have 3 books that I'll be bringing. Well, 2 of them are directly New Thought related. My first children's book, Djembe, and New Thought, New Words, and also supporting people in the community with their work, with their words. I say be there, and the university, the Unity property is amazing. It is beautiful and expansive. Woo!
Yes.
So looking forward to see you there. Come up and say hey. We can grab a bite to eat and share space and share words and some laughter and some joy.
Yes, there is no doubt that I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, God willing, and I'm excited about this conference. This is the second one. It's only going to get bigger and better, and I encourage you, if you can't be there in person, definitely be there virtually. It's something that you don't want to miss. Stories, music, youth, food, laughter, dance, entertainment, all there waiting for you. And so thank you again, brother Fabian, and I look
My
forward
pleasure.
to seeing you shortly. Much
Blessings.
love, peace, and blessings.
Thank you.
This fantastic interview was just an example of the depth and content of those presenting at Celebrating Our Soul, Consciously Creating Change. Go to padntg.com to register. Be there for it.